All right, so we got another request to cover a token project. And if it sounds like I'm a little bit hesitant to do so, I apologize for that translating through the audio. The truth is, I'm hesitant to cover it mostly because I was aware of where it was and the hype around it at that time, and I purposely ignored it because I knew it was doomed for disaster of some form. However, we are a podcast for the people at cryptotalkradio.net. And as we get a request to cover a token project, as long as it's not absolute trash, we don't mind doing at least high level coverage. Even if it is somewhat trash, if we get the request, we'll just call out whether it's trash, and what it is, or we don't believe it. And then it's incumbent for those listening upon those token developers to say, hey, we are serious. We actually do want to be treated serious. It sounds like you have a lot of great ideas. Let's get on the horn and talk out what you're thinking. And we see you're a certified auditor and we like your thoughts because we do want to be treated like a serious project. Many of them don't do that. In fact, so far, I've only ever had one or two that have done that. And that's unfortunate, but not unexpected. So I got the request, came from Oscar Vasquez, and I don't think he's a boxer, but Oscar Vasquez says, quote, when review, of course, that's bad grammar, when review for Marshall Enu. Would like to hear your thoughts. And thank you, Oscar, for the question. Again, I was aware of the hype around what used to be known as Marshall Rogan Enu back when it first became a thing, and I was aware of what they were trying to do, and I've been aware of all of the other projects that tried to copy what they were trying to do at that time. But just a level set for those that don't know and didn't follow it because you're grown-ups and don't follow social media, and I applaud you for being such. But so at one point in time, there was this thought of helping out MMA fighters financially because those that don't know the business, what tends to happen is fighters of different combat sports will get into tough situations. They need expensive surgery, they need this, and there's very little financial support. There's not a union, there's not really much financial support. It doesn't matter if it's WWE, whether you consider it real or not, doesn't matter. It's still a form of combat, even though it's largely scripted. MMA, boxing, kickboxing, all of these have the same types of challenges. And the criticism has always been, well, why doesn't Dana pay more to the MMA fighters? Or why does Vince pay more to the wrestlers? Or why don't the networks or the promoters pay more to the boxers? And the truth is, it's all a business. And the sad truth about social media is that it gave people a voice that probably shouldn't have one, because I saw there was a thread going around, people attacking Ice Cube decades after the fact for the paydays on Friday, when John Witherspoon, rest in peace, was talking about he only got $5,000, and Chris Tucker said he only got some weed, and then Big Worm, Faison Love, he had to come out and say, you got to understand, at the time nobody thought this would be a success. You're basically taking a risk, and you take a whatever payday they offer you, and you get exposure to other projects if you did a good job, and you kind of build. It's like any other job. Well, in the fight game, it's the same situation. A low-level fighter that's fresh off the Olympics or fresh off the strip or whatever, they don't have anything built up. They don't have any credentials. They don't have any hype. Nobody knows who they are, and they got to build a name, and they got to build a brand. And this takes time. And until you get there, your paydays are low. It's basically what you can command in terms of what you draw. That's always been the case. And unfortunately, social media has given certain people a voice that are trying to say, well, they just deserve it. They should just get it. And then later, if some success happens to have happened, like say a fight was now regarded 30 years later as an amazing fight, it's like, well, you should just go back and pay them that. That's not the way the business works. It just isn't. So these people, whoever behind this, had this idea, let's create this way to financially help these fighters. And they had this idea, unfortunately, and it's kind of similar to this strange Enu stuff, garbage, because they had this idea that during one of these UFC events, and this happened, they said, we're just going to have an announcement read, a shout out to Marshall Rogan Enu. Well, this Marshall Rogan Enu, the name came from, apparently, and again, I wasn't deep in it, but I just watched this. Apparently the dog of Joe Rogan is named Marshall, right? So they, just like with, what was it? Elon sends a tweet and says, my dog's going to be named Floki, and then Floki Inu becomes a thing. That kind of garbage. That's what this was. So this then gets an unreasonable level of hype, as it always seems to do, and the graph follows that pattern. Well, then After this announcement comes out, Joe Rogan's like, look, that's cool, but I ain't got nothing to do with this, man. I didn't do anything and I have nothing to do with this. The token tanks hard, right? And recently it's kind of on a rebuild. And I looked as per request into what it is. They've called out, we got nothing to do with Joe Rogan. The problem is the name was already flawed on the face. They should not have gone that route. And I know why they did it, but it was stupid. So, okay. I look at the token site, marshallenu.com. If you want to check it out, I do recommend you do so. Number one, I'm not a fan of the design simply because it doesn't give me the sense that they're trying to help people. It gives me a sense that they're trying to roll off the back of fighters for their own benefit. That's the sense I get as just looking at their site. And I'm just calling out aesthetics. I'm talking about how you present yourself. Do you present yourself according to the message you said, which is essentially a charity? I don't get charity from this. I get we're rolling off the back of fighters. They might not be. Point is that's what I'm seeing. And it's like, okay. So this is on the Ethereum chain, and it's also on the Binance Smart chain. So I was able to run the contract, and I'll get to that in a second. But they're on a lot of different exchanges. These are not tier one exchanges, but they have, certainly a good presence on exchanges. Bitmart's a good, big player. XT.com's a player. MEXC's a player. LBank's a player. Hotbit's a player. So they've got a pretty good presence on centralized exchanges. And their goal, as stated, is, quote, to support fighters worldwide no matter what stage they're at in their career. Quote, only makes it harder when they struggle financially to pay for things like comps, trainers, and general living. Quote, a project created by dedicated MMA fans to help fighters with that extra bit of income with no strings attached so they can focus on what they do best. And, quote, donated over $4 million to more than 400 MMA fighters. Okay, well, if that's all the case, and I don't see on their site evidence that they did so I have to take them on face value, but that would call out my risk number one. If it's true that they've donated $4 million, what I would expect to see is some sort of an accounting and roster where I can independently verify those distributions in some form. I don't see that anywhere on the site. No, it's not acceptable to go to Telescam, which I see they want to force you to. And as I heard Shel Sonnen, who's an ex-fighter, and he has a podcast now, and he was talking about this and what it was about. He did a great job explaining it. He was basically saying that, yeah, you just come to the Telescam and that's, he's not in the bubble, but he just kind of rolled with it as an investment. And he said at the time it went like 300x, 400x, which doesn't surprise me because they essentially, I don't want to use the term, but it is what it is. They essentially pimped out Joe Rogan's dog in order to get hype on a UFC event, which the problem there is that if he wasn't involved, I don't think they should have done that. It's the same thing as like Keanu. So that already gives me red flags because you're doing the same thing as what happened with Keanu Inu. And okay, that may sound good, but I don't support this. So then they have this road to tier one exchanges, which is, apparently is their roadmap of concept. There's no dates on any of the roadmap items. That's already risk number one. They called out that in what they called out basically growth as priority number one, donation to athletes. Again, you don't have any evidence they did this. Verifications happening, tier one exchanges happening. They want to grow. Apparently, they're calling out executives. So they're at least positioning like a real business, but I don't see that they are one. Then down later is where it got a little bit interesting. They called out things like getting Conor McGregor or Khabib Nurmagomedov as martial ambassadors. That's never going to happen. I'll call that, man. I'll call that. I want smoke. Partner with the top 3 MMA league. Well, there aren't very many MMA leagues, and I can tell you UFC is not going to do it. So can you get Bellator? It's kind of an iffy. So I don't know if you're going to do this. And then Discord used as a hub for fighters and holders. That's easy to do. I don't know why it's dropped down to the near middle of this instead of one of the top things you do. Registering an LLC, I don't know why you wouldn't do that up front because of the tax implications for not having done so. Sponsorships, anybody can do that. I'm not really impressed. Crypto lessons for fighters, well, that's fine, but why wouldn't you do that up front? Then they called out that they want to decrease the tax over time based on the increase of market cap. It was at this point I took the opportunity to spend over to my favorite tool and should be yours as well, MarketMove, marketmove.ai. Ran the contract through. It showed me the same, it crapped at a point and then it started to somewhat climb back up as they were kind of fixing some of the things. And it's currently on an upward trend. I would caveat to you that largely the upward trend is being supported, I'll say, by the current pumps we're experiencing with Ethereum largely. And then Ethereum, of course, supports Binance, BNB. So that's also helping support it. But the audit came back with a really good score. They actually didn't have very many issues on the actual audit. So I was very impressed on the audit side of what they found. The only thing they called out was it's not renounced. That means that they can set certain current addresses, basically their buddies, to benefit on the project. So from a surface level, I'm like, okay, it looks like they fixed something to get back up to a certain level. And it looks like it's climbing back to a level. And it's not like it completely crapped back to zero, or near zero like Seifu. It wasn't that bad of a crap out. It was a significant dip for what it was, but it seems like they were able to recover from it. Whether that was due to anything they fundamentally did or just simply the marketing and the social media chatter is not easy to tell from the site. Now, I think there's a couple of things that hold this project back from my eyes. Number one, as far as the contract is still Marshall Rogan Emu. And even when you go to the little buy widget on their site, it's still the MRI acronym. So to me, that feels like you are held hostage by this broken past, just like with Keanu, just like with Para and so many others. And I understand that they don't want to do a disruptive change, but to me, this is one of those where if you were going to do a thing, you really should not. First of all, you shouldn't have gone in trying to pimp Joe Rogan's dog. So that's number one. It doesn't matter if you were successful in what you tried to do because we can't prove any of it. What we should do is say, okay, we're going to fix the contract. We're going to go to a new something and we're going to get better at our approach so that we're not just pimping somebody's dog. Create your own brand, like be your own entity, create your own brand. Don't pimp off something else or somebody else. And I don't know why that made sense because we've seen so many times where people try to do that and it never ends well because it's just short pump. And that's what we saw. We saw short pumps and people took off profits and then they took off from the project. This project then has never gone like it. I believe it started at like a penny or whatever, right? And it went as high as maybe about 3 cents. So it's not like people would have made money that dumped in, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands off the pump periods. And that's why I see such significant dumps. But in terms of the price, it's never gone to a significant high, mostly because of, number one, the sentiment, I believe, in what happened with that fiasco with Rogan. Number two, its supply arguably doesn't really support going significantly higher in a bear market. So if we accept all of what I'm describing to you, that is what they did, I don't think it was a good idea, and they took the wrong avenue and thus hurt investor sentiment, and it's going to be harder for them to recover from it. If we accept all this as true, do I think that this one might get to a positive trend someday? Sure. Do I think it'll take a long time? Yes. Not just because of the bear, but because again, I think it starts like you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Like to me, the right answer on this business would have been to start with what is your brand, your own brand that is unique to you. And then you can tie it into helping fighters not caring about Bellator, not caring about UFC, not even caring about MMA, just saying, in general, this is what we're here to do, and we have our own brand, and we have our own mission, and we're not trying to pimp off somebody's pet. We're just saying, this is who we are, and we're here to do that. I think if they had started that way, number one. Number two, if they had incentivized holding as opposed to incentivizing selling, because arguably they incentivize selling. They said that, I see that there's taxes and all that other kind of stuff, but because they pimped off the dog, they already set the precedent that they were trying to create a pump and dump. And they knew that's what was going to happen. So it's like you're incentivizing pump and dump. Well, why would you want to do that instead of incentivizing hold? To me, something that would have been smarter is create your own brand. This is what we're doing. Support all types of fighters. It doesn't have to be MMA. And then from this, create some sort of staking mechanism underlying to this that as an incentive to stake, money goes, you get, we pay you rewards, but we also are paying the fighters from the stakes as opposed to pump and dump. That would have, I think, created more stability in the price dips that we saw because people are always going to dump, right? But not to the degree that I saw with the immediate craps that I see. So will it recover? Too early to say, I don't know. I'm saying that it feels like sentiment might play a factor in the harm. I'm saying that the contract looks clean as far as an audit goes. I'm saying that there are fundamental issues that I believe are baggage coming from the bad mistakes they made before. There's a number of different things that are holding the token back, right? The other things I saw. So apparently they submitted for an audit back in February, and the audit's still not done, and they're still apparently still running it. That's weird. And I know Certic has been kind of running slow, but usually they'd have been done by now. So as it stands, I don't see that there's a complete audit, Certic audit at least, and I don't know what that means specifically. I'm just calling out that the audit is not complete. So although there's a link to allegedly audit, it's not really done. There's NFTs and other stuff that as you heard me, I don't really rate, and it is what it is, because I'm more fundamental in what is it and how does it work. In terms of the contract, I don't have an issue. I'm talking strategy. I'm talking their marketing. I'm talking their messaging. I'm talking their branding. Like everything else that's outside the crypto bubble, to me, feels jacked up and ill thought out. And I don't know why they did what they did. And it feels like they're trying to recalibrate and realign and get back on track. And that's fine, but it's hard to rebuild once you screwed up that first time. The last thing I saw that I'll wrap up. Apparently, and I can't, this is on their site, but apparently this is a fork, quote unquote, fork of Clifford Emu. Clifford Emu, you may or may not have heard of, but it's that one that has the red dog that makes no damn sense. But Clifford Emu had a lot of issues. And as a result, what was happening was they implemented this daily burn and all this stuff, and yet the price still kept crapping out. And people suspect it's like a slow rug pull, kind of under the hood. They're just draining off the project. Is the theory, because Clifford had climbed quite a bit in the heyday. We're talking, I want to say, geez, what was that? November, December, maybe October. It was at a point, December. So at a point, it was like climbing like nuts. And then all of a sudden, it just starts steadily crap. Like it wasn't a significant crap down. There was a dip, but I'm talking, it was like a steady, almost drain kind of crap. So if this was forked from Clifford, and I looked at the code and it didn't look like it, but they said it on their site that it is. If it is, that would be a risk. So risk number one is their sentiment, messaging, marketing, their approach, what they did, I think might make it hard to recover because they made critical mistakes up front, similar to what Keanu Inu had done for the same reasons. And Keanu had the same pumps. Strange Emu, same reasons, same pumps. It's hard to recover once you make those critical mistakes. Whoever thought that was a good idea should have been, frankly, slapped, because at the end of the day, you knew all you were doing is generating a pump and dump. That's what you were doing, because you knew that you wanted to generate some pump that was not going to sustain, because you knew that Joe Rogan was going to come out and say something about it. And you were trying to take the Cult Dow approach, which is, well, any press is good press, do. And it's not, because we've learned time and again, negative press will harm crypto projects in the long term. Will Marshall be around? I don't know. But I think they made some bad decisions, which is unfortunate, because if it looks good, like good code, that's being mismanaged by people that don't know what the heck they're doing. If you want to buy in, marshallenu.com, by all means, take a look at it. I can't verify that they truly are paying any fighters, because they have no accounting anywhere on their site. So that's one. And then two, what's the screening process? How do you know that a fighter deserves that money, or are they just taking you for a ride, which is a Marvel vs. Capcom 2 reference? So there's a lot of risks. I personally would not buy in without significant changes in what they're doing. If they're truly serious, as I've always said, and you want that smoke, they're free to chat with me, and I'll talk you through all the different things that I think they're lacking. But the number one recommendation I would make would be a migration to a V2, because we got to clean it. You'd have to clean up the name. I would fix the freaking logo by far and away. And I would just rethink, what data is of value to everybody outside the crypto bubble. The accounting records, I think, is top of that list as well. But it's just presentation of what you are, trying to step away from what you were, and presenting it as a solid project. That said, Mr. Vasquez, if you're listening to this and you want to just jump in and the FOMO tempts you too much, by all means, I'm not saying it's a bad project. I'm saying that I don't see it sustainable over the long haul without some changes to what they're doing. And I would never recommend them, not without those changes. If they want the smoke, I'm always available to chat with any project that's serious and wants to stick around because the concept sounds good, but I would need more evidence. And no, it's not about telescam. Their site needs to be better than what it is for everybody else that's an adult and doesn't go to those jacked up tools. And their logo needs to actually resonate like a business because, especially if you're going to go in LLC, if you want to do that and you want to open up a dog grooming business, then it's probably okay. But if you're trying to be a serious business that's actually trying to make a difference, you need to rethink how you present outside the crypto bubble. And that's what I've been hammering to a lot of these projects that if they want to smoke, I'm here and ready to share that knowledge.